Good evening, good evening, and thank you for joining us here on blackdoctor.org. I am Ellis Dean, the Director of Programming at Black Doctor, and we're here to open your eyes. And so I know you were missing us last month, but Dr. Coney is well set out. He's got a busy schedule, so we could not make it. So we're going to do two this month to make up for missing September. So, again, a couple of things we want you to do at the beginning of the program. We always like to know where people are watching us from, so please drop that in the comments and let us know where you're watching us from all over the world. We'd like to know that. Number two, if you know somebody that needs this information, please tag them or share it on your page, because we need to get this information out to as many people as possible to change their lives. And then finally, if you have any questions about any of the information that we present tonight, please drop those in the comments and we will get them asked and answered. And finally, if we say anything tonight, do not change your treatment plan. If you are currently being seen by an ophthalmologist or you're under the care of an ophthalmologist for diabetic retinopathy, please take this as informational and then go and have a conversation. Do not change your treatment plan, your treatment regimen with your doctor until you had that conversation, because Dr. Coney, he's got to look at your chart and examine you before he can make any recommendation for what you should do in your specific case. We want to make sure that we get that information out. So I see we got New Jersey in the house, Arkansas. Keep that coming in. We'd like to know where everybody's watching us from. Tonight's show is a little bit different because what we've been doing is talking about diabetic retinopathy in all of its facets. We talked about the consequences of the diabetic retinopathy, and that was a fantastic show. I go back and watch that when we had some special guests on that show. We've talked all about diabetic retinopathy, but a lot of times we don't talk about what are those support services, what are those resources that are available to people to help them along that journey. So tonight we're going to be talking about what are those support services, what are those resources that you can tap into to help you along that journey, and that in any stage that you are along that journey, whether it's beginning and you're just diagnosed with diabetes and okay, I want to get some supportive services, or if you're along that path where you're getting close to, hey, you might be losing some sight. What are some other supportive services that you can need? Because everybody's going to need different types of services along the way. So we're going to talk about that tonight. So have your pen and your piece of paper ready, or you can go back and watch it and write it down then. So I've said all I needed to say. Dr. Coney, how you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back. I'm looking forward to a great discussion tonight.
Yeah, we got people. We got Karen already in the building from Jersey, Tanya, Little Rock, Arkansas. All right, banging in Little Rock. Barbie and Cola, South Carolina. I see the folks, and then we also just had somebody that just want to say thank you for all you do. So that's a great way to walk right into tonight's broadcast. So to get us started, let's just do a quick overview of what is diabetic retinopathy to kind of set the stage for what type of supportive services that might be needed for somebody that is living with this condition.
So just to recap on what diabetic retinopathy is a long-term complication of diabetes. And most time it comes from, being uncontrolled over a period of time. And so there are risk factors. Obviously, duration of diabetes is important. Your control of your diabetes is important. And then there's other things too, like high blood pressure, cholesterol, exercise, obesity, those sort of things. But as diabetes progresses in the eye, it starts to damage the blood vessels in the eye, the same way it damages everything else, like your kidneys and your toes, your heart and your brain. It damages small vessels. And these small vessels go through changes and you lose their support system. And when we look in the eye, we can see the loss of that support system. It's called aneurysms. And these aneurysms, they leak out fluid. It's like a leaking pipe. If in the wintertime, if you have a leaky pipe, you run your hand along the pipe, there's a little bit of condensation. Well, if that gets worse, that condensation then starts to puddle on the floor. Same thing in the eye. You start having this little puddling of fluid, and then it starts to build. When that fluid it builds in the middle of the eye, and we call that diabetic macular edema, and that's the leading cause of swelling in the eye. And then there's several progressions of diabetes. Early on, there may be no complications in terms of sight, right? You have no problems what's going on. And that's the main reason why people don't come in early enough. But if it's not picked up, not only can you have leaking blood vessels, but then you also develop abnormal blood vessels. We call that neovascularization. And these abnormal blood vessels, they can bleed. And when they bleed, you see these floaters. They can form scar tissue and they can form retinal detachments. This is the more advanced forms of diabetes. And
Mhm.
really, the most important thing that you can do is go in and be evaluated at the time of diagnosis, because oftentimes we're never really sure how long someone had diabetes. Sometimes people come in because the scales were tipped. They came in because they had some angina or chest pain. They had an episode where they passed out. They had a problem with their kidneys or an infection, and they just wasn't aware they had diabetes. So this could be going on for many years, and before you know it, you start to lose vision. So diagnosis at the time of being an eye exam at the time of being diagnosed uh, with diabetes. Once we recognize you have diabetes, if you need treatment, the therapies today are so effective that there is no reason why anyone needs to lose progressive vision if they're treated properly and the right follow-up is maintained. And I think that's the most important thing for all my patients, is to go in, be seen, and stick with the regimen. And if you do those, 90% of the times we're able to keep your vision from actually deteriorating over time.
Yeah, I mean, and I think one of the messaging that we have said before on here, and I just want to make sure that we get it out on this program is, number one, you've got to have a relationship with a primary care physician so you can get your blood sugar checked on a regular basis. Number two, you should also know your family history. If you've got a family history of diabetes, it can be kind of generational, and that increases the risk of developing diabetes. And then also make sure you're maintaining a healthy diet, exercise, getting your proper rest so your body can process your blood sugar. So those things are just kind of things that you can have real control over that will help you prevent or slow that process of gaining diabetes. Now, that's the overview, great snapshot of what we're talking about tonight. So the first thing is, what are some supportive resources for just somebody that is just newly diagnosed with diabetes, hasn't really quite seen the ophthalmologist yet, but they're just like, what can I do? I've been diagnosed with diabetes. What can I do? What are some support services or resources that I can lean into to help me along this new journey of being diagnosed with diabetes?
Ellis, this is a really, really important topic, because I don't think, and this is all across all of medicine, I really don't think we have the support of any diseases as well as we need to, whether it's cardiovascular disease, whether it's diabetes, whether it's mental health, MS, cancer, whatever the case may be. I think support is the key for a lot of our patients, particularly when it comes to your family, because I think that the family should be engaged. Those conversations at the kitchen, those conversations in your bedroom, what's going on with your family. I think everyone could benefit from those conversations, particularly if it's something that could be screened for. Diabetic support is a way for people with diabetes to gain and maintain the skills, the knowledge, and the confidence to just thrive with their diabetes. And I think that's really key. I think the first person that you normally get that from is the support staff from your medical doctor's office. Oftentimes they'll have a nurse practitioner or they have a dietitian, and these are people with great knowledge that can help you get those skills, get the confidence, help you understand the disease process and how diabetes as a long-term problem can affect your body systemically. There's programs out there from certified educators. There's programs that we have in all our communities that may be community-based, where you don't have to drive very far. There's peer-led groups you can find. There's also online platforms. But the most important thing, you want to make sure that they are recognized by the DSMES, because that's where they get the certification on how to treat diabetes. And they will help you understand that journey. They'll help you to stick to that program. It's like when you're working out. When you first work out, the reason why people get a personal trainer, because that personal trainer, they make sure that you do the things that you need to do. They check in with you. Did you check your sugar today? Did you check your feet today?
Right.
Are you having any problems with your kidneys? So these are all the things that they help you to do, and may help you to understand what that journey could be like over time.
Mm-hmm. No, I love it. I love it because, yeah, I think the personal trainer analogy is spot on, because, yeah, you can work out by yourself, but you might pull something, you might you might hurt something, you might not have that motivation because you don't have that accountability partner. So your personal trainer is also somebody that's been trained on how to get you through this process the best way, to get the goals that you have set for yourself, and they can also hold you accountable. Hey, I didn't see you at the gym today. What happened? You missed your appointment today. What's going on? Is everything okay? They're going to hold you accountable for the appointments that you set and that you met, and so to keep you on track to reaching your goals. So I think that's a perfect analogy.
Well, I'll say this: these groups will also help you not just with information and guidance, but practical solutions that you can do on a daily basis. One of the most impactful talks I had with you, we had one of your co-hosts. She was a vegan,
Yes.
a, di- a dietitian, and doing that call or doing that podcast, she really talked about how to keep your sugar levels kind of maintained, not fluctuated. The things that the difference between carbohydrates and saturated fats and proteins, and
Mm-hmm.
the common things that we all can do to not go into starvation mode or have our bodies go way out of whack where we have problems. And that was things that was really practical that I learned from myself, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
guilty of not eating breakfast in the morning, maybe not eating lunch eating a larger dinner. And so trying to change that up, I understood my own body's metabolism. And
Yeah.
those sort of individuals can give you the insight that you need for those solutions, the emotional support, and the sense of belonging, to kind of own what you have, and then be a better mentorship to your own body.
Absolutely. Yeah, what you're talking about is Dr. Monique May, and she had hosted a show called Veganish. So there is a host of videos on the Black Doctor YouTube page that you can just go and search for Veganish on YouTube, and there's talks about what's the best sugars for you in terms of natural sugars, what they do to your body, and how they raise your blood sugar levels. We did 3 programs just on sugar alone. What are the best vegetables? What the color the vegetables do? Red, yellow, blue, all the different types of vegetables and colors, and how they impact the body. So there's some cooking demonstrations she made during Super Bowl. She did some vegan nachos, which look good. I was skeptical, but they look good. So there's a whole host of shows on there as well, and you're making some wonderful points. So I would say, additionally, check your insurance plan. If you have insurance, if you have private insurance, check your insurance plan and see if they will pay for a dietitian or a nutritionist that can help you on that journey, and they can kind of give you some tips, because those of us that have been eating unhealthily might need some help to switch and go back, because I promise you, when I pass Popeyes, I feel like it's calling me. It talks to me through my car radio speakers. The music changes and it's just come, stop, and get a 4-piece. So I need somebody that can help me not do that, so I can keep on a healthy journey. So absolutely. And if you don't have that in your insurance plan, if it's not covered and you don't have the ability to pay for it out of pocket, there are, like the videos we have on BDO, there are some great podcasts and some people on TikTok and all across social media that can help you. We've got another lady that used to have a show here called That Salad Lady. You can follow her on TikTok, and she talks about how to make fresh salads, right? And the importance of salads to the body. So there's ways, there's resources that are free and they're available to you that can give you some great advice and tips on how to stay and eat healthy. So that was
You can also get some great information just from the bigger foundations.
Mhm.
The American Diabetes Association, and they have things that may be local and also more international. You can always find the local rep. They're always putting on different avenues going on. And most times these are free. There's so much diabetic care education specialists out there with pure support groups today. Sometimes they may meet at the Y, sometimes they may meet um, at your local community centers. Churches are doing things right now because they know that diabetes is a pandemic problem, right? And so everyone right now wants to be on the right side of healthcare, and they're doing these different fairs. So there's a lot of places where you can get free information from. What people don't know is a lot of the companies that actually make the different drugs, the different biologics that we take, they,
Mhm.
they actually have portions on their websites where you can go in. They'll have maybe some, videos sometimes and talk about what diabetes is, how the pancreas really works, the things that they affect. I work for one of them, which is sponsor of this podcast tonight, Genentech. Genentech has a whole section on things about diabetes and things that you can get involved in the community. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that's really critical if we are to learn different things. And these programs, these institutions, they also have ways to help you pay for your medications. And I
Yes.
think this is critical. And we may not know this. Our doctor may not disclose this. The nurse practitioner may not disclose this. But once you're on their websites, they may have certain programs on, how can I get, a continuous glucose monitor? How can I, pay for my insulin? Is there any kind of assistance that you have help me paying for my paying for my medications? And so all that information oftentimes are found on these bigger companies' websites because they have endowments that are there for the community to take advantage of. And I think over the years, a lot of this money is probably not spent because people just don't know about it.
Right. And they just say, oh, I can't afford it. And they don't even go and ask any more questions. They just say, I can't afford it. And they might be able to if they just would search for those programs. So absolutely, that you're absolutely right about that. And all those medications, because they could be expensive, especially the newer, the ones, the injectables that are in terms of for controlling A1C, they can run pretty high. So please check out those programs. I put the American Diabetes Association website link in the comments. Don't go right now because we still haven't finished the show, but go there. It's diabetes.org, and there's a host of resources there. There's another one as well, who is also a friend of the show, Dr. Lenore Coleman. I don't know if you remember her from back in the day. She is with Healing Our Village, and they have a website. She wrote a book called Healing Our Village, and you can go to hovhealth.com, and she is more she's got a host of videos that she does, and she talks about diabetes as well. And she's got an app, and she's got other services that are available to you that you can lean into, that are some at no cost and others are very, very low cost. I think some of them are like maybe $5-6 a month. And you can get a coach, a virtual coach, and all those other things in order to control your blood sugar and get you on the right diet plan to control and lower your blood sugar levels. And so I wanted to give a shout out to Dr. Coleman and all the stuff she's doing at Healing Our Village Health. So you can go to her website at Healing Our Village, hovhealth.com. All right, so now that's for diabetes, right? So now we're moving to, you waited too long.
Mm.
Now you are started having some retinopathy, started having some of the pooling, some of the extra blood vessels, and they're not as strong, so they start shredding and pooling. I don't know if there's stages, like with cancer, there's stages. Are there stages of diabetic retinopathy? And if so, can we talk about what services or some support might be needed at each stage?
Sure. So we stage diabetes, and the staging is really critical because the staging, we know the natural history of the progression of the disease. And so the staging helps us to know what percentage individuals will progress over a particular time period and when they can lose vision and how often they should follow up. And that's why staging is critical, just like cancer. You can stage cancer uh, and know that by a certain stage, what the survival rate of that patient may be. And
Mhm.
so those are the things that when you go to your doctor and they go through the grading and staging, this is how they come up with those numbers. It's like the natural history of the disease if you did nothing, right?
Mhm.
So we typically break it up. It's very simple. So whether someone has blood vessels or not have blood vessels, we call that non-proliferative or proliferative.
Okay.
When the non-proliferative disease is the most common, that's when you have more early stages of diabetes, and we do that mild, moderate, severe, and then very severe. And we look at that by how from a clinical standpoint what that eye looks like, and that's why the baseline exam of where someone comes into you is the most important. If someone comes to see me and they have severe non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, I know they have a 50% chance of developing blood vessels in their eye over the next 3 years, which they can end up having severe vision loss.
Okay.
So those are eyes that we think are high risk, and we want to be more aggressive with those eyes before they advance. Okay, now if someone has mild disease, you know what? We can follow those patients every 9 months or 12 months, etc. Early on in the disease process, when you have mild or moderate disease, most times they don't need any type of support. They can just be monitored. I think the most important thing is that I always concentrate on my ABCs. You heard me talk about this before.
Right.
It's the A1C, blood pressure, cholesterol, diet, exercise, and I'll throw smoking in there as well. Now, what you want to know is that at every level, you can develop diabetic macular edema. Now, that's a whole different conversation versus staging. So DME, as is also called, can happen at any stage. But as the disease progresses, DME is more common.
Okay.
So if you have DME, oftentimes you will need some type of therapy for it, because we know that if you don't treat swelling, swelling over long periods of time will deteriorate the vision. So look at it this way here. It's kind of like carpet. If you have water that gets in your carpet, a little bit of water in your carpet is not going to cause any problems. But if you have a flood and that carpet stays wet for a longer periods of time, you start to get unraveling of the fibers. They start to shred. The baseboard starts to get moldy. That's what happens in your eyes. The natural support system, the blood vessels, and the things that allow you to see, they start to deteriorate and degenerate over time. It's like a slow death where if something's under fluid, it just stops working. And that's what happens over time when you're with your central vision. Your vision just slowly deteriorate over time. Now, once you get to the advanced level and you really have maybe, let's say, profound vision loss, then that becomes a really different issue, because now your quality of life is affected. And here in Ohio, and I think in most states, the minimal vision level to just drive during the daytime is 20/60, and 20/40 is unrestricted. So those numbers are really critical. We also know that as you lose those levels of vision, your quality of life changes. The ability to read things changes.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to see color and contrast and do activities, particularly activities at the same pace, changes. Your depth perception may change. So if you have a job, this may be affected. If you're driving, these things may be affected. So you will require certain type of visual aids. Maybe you need a magnifier. Maybe you need some assistance. Now, at the more advanced stages, people can lose vision completely. And this is what we don't like to talk about. And it's very devastating to the patient. Depression kind of sets in. Not only are you depressed, but you just lose the ability to do the normal things. Like, how do you check your sugar? How do you know how much insulin you're giving yourself? You can underdose or overdose or not take any medication at all. There's all these things that go on when you lose your vision that becomes important. And so, again, the most important thing is get in early. And I know you may not like going into doctors, but it's really important to have that conversation. And I think a program like yours really help your audience to become advocates for themselves. Put their feet to the fire. Doc, what else can I be doing to help myself out? Who should I reach out to so that long term I don't have these problems? What are those support systems that I need? Talk about the barriers. Doc, I live an hour away. I work every day. Do you have afternoon hours? Do you have an office closer to where I live?
Right.
Can you refer me someplace closer where I live if driving is an issue? Because we know that geographically, once you live more than 60 minutes from a clinic, the quality of care is just not the same. It's really hard for you to make those appointments. So this is where you can talk about all those other things, because transportation is one of those things you will need help with. And so let the doctor know. There's a whole host of things that can change, but I think as the biggest things from a vision standpoint is making sure that they have the visual aids they need. If the vision gets too bad, you can refer them to your local sight center. Every major city has one. If you're a veteran, they have a sight center also at the VA, where they can give you different types of magnifiers. They have computers where they make things very large. A buddy of mine is working on special glasses for both near and distance with low vision. So it's now kind of it's more engaging, and then it's using AI type of technology to see images that you couldn't ordinarily see. So technology is getting better. And if you're really, really bad and you need that assistance to learn how to use a cane, that's important. And also even Braille for some people. Some people go on where they lose complete vision, and the only way they can function is learning how to read Braille.
Absolutely. And there's another host of, well, while you still have your vision, if you have vision loss, then even some Google them, they will read it to you out loud to you, and you can just tell them, ask Alexa, you can ask Siri. There's a lot of ways that you can utilize technology to function. But the National Eye Institute at the National Institutes of Health, the NEI, they have some great resources there. There's also the Prevent Blindness website. You can get a lot of information there at Prevent Blindness. There are some charities that are available as well. The Fight for Sight, you can go there. That's a charity. There's also the American Foundation for the Blind. So those are just a few. And again, the ADA overall has a whole section dedicated to diabetic retinopathy when it regards to maintaining your vision health. And so those are just a few. There's a number of resources. And then again, with social media, there are support groups that are, you just type in that search bar on Facebook and diabetic retinopathy, and boom, a whole host of resources. And then you can join, or a family member, somebody that's part of your support group, particularly if you have pronounced vision loss. You can have that caretaker, that caregiver join that support group for their mental health purposes, but they can also learn and share resources and ideas and places where they can go to assist you even further. So there's a host of resources, but number one, you've got to engage, right? Engagement, lack of engagement is probably what's got us to this point, right? Because we weren't checking our blood sugar, we weren't eating right, we got to the point where we're diabetic, and then now to the point it's progressive where vision is deteriorating. So you've got to engage. We want to say whatever vision that is left. That's number one. And number two, you got to follow up, right? You got to be adherent to whatever treatment plan, whatever you're engaging into, you've got to follow up, and you've got to be diligent about it and disciplined about it in order to see it continue all the way through, because any drop off could result in a total loss of sight. And if you do lose your sight, understanding that there is some long-term implications on that as well. There's been some studies that say it could shorten your lifespan by 3 to 5 years, just because of the quality of life is going to change significantly with the loss of sight. And so those are some things you do want to avoid. That's why we're doing this particular program about support and resources that are available to you.
Yeah, Ellis, a few things come to mind too. And we do have some savvy patients who learn how the system can work for them.
Yeah.
Whether it's, having the inability to read your thermostat. You can go in and have a smart thermostat, but if your bills are too high and you didn't know how to change your thermostat, you may qualify for a reduction in your bill. They may have a loan forgiveness program because your bill was very high just because you didn't know how to change something. So there are programs out there. I have one lady, she comes in, she gets her they pay for her fishing license every year because she has a visual problem. They put ramps in her house. They put different lights in her house. So
Yeah.
there's all these grants out there that may be available for visual disability. That if you ask, you may qualify. They have talking watches out there. They have even stoves where, when you put the metal on one of the jets or one of the eyes, it heats up because it works on conduction. And once you remove it, it cools down so you don't burn yourself because you really can't see how hot the surface is. So we've come a long way with some of the technology. And I think that unfortunately, this may not be very visible to us, but if you go and you talk to different manufacturers, or you go to Home Depot and you say, hey, this is the dilemma I have. These are the barriers that I have. Do you have anything from a solution standpoint that can help me have a better quality of life and still be safe? So, but we may have to be more of an advocate for ourselves, and that's the good reason about getting plugged in to your sight centers. Your sight centers, most times, they know all the local things that you can apply for in your community that you can have access to.
Also, speaking of that, just a social worker, right? There's a lot of social workers in cities, and that's what they're trained to do, to connect people in the community resources, particularly people that might not have a lot of financial resources at their disposal. That's where these LCSWs, these MSWs that's where they come in and they kick into play. And so you just contact one of those and say, hey, look, I'm having trouble doing this. And then they will connect you to the resources available, to some that can build a ramp for you, put the smart systems in your home to where they can regulate, and you can do a lot of things that can be added to you at low or no cost to you. And those social workers are really, really trained, and they're very, very good at doing those things. And then some of them in certain states, I know, like I live in the state of Georgia, and in the state of Georgia, if they are LCSW, that's a licensed clinical social worker, they can also do one-on-one counseling to help to talk to you about your mental health as well. So not only they can connect you to services outside that can help you, but they can also do one-on-one counseling with you for your any mental health challenges you might be having as a result of dealing with diabetic retinopathy. There was a good question. So Deborah, thank you for that question. She was asking about, she wanted to connect with Dr. Coleman at Healing Our Village. And so I dropped the link to her website there in the comment section as well. So please check out Dr. Coleman. She's not only she's a fantastic, she's a bundle of energy at 70 plus, as Dr. Coney can attest to. She is on fire about this particular topic in terms of diabetes, and she will get you where you need to go. I'm not adding, say ADA's got a great site, fantastic site. I go to it on a regular basis to get some information, but I know Dr. Coleman, so I'm going to give her the better of the two endorsements when it comes to that. Dr. Coney, support can come in many ways, and you mentioned it earlier. And we're talking a lot about resources and websites and things of that nature, but sometimes we look to our family and friends first. How do we have those conversations if that somebody is starting to have some visual impairment? Because that means that's embarrassing, right? To say, hey, look, I've let my diabetes progress to the point where it's having a significant impact on my vision. And I'm sure you can tell some stories about people really switching glasses or avoiding, certain things, driving at night or driving at dusk when the vision is really, really hard. They avoid driving at dusk, and they start making excuses to not go places because they know their vision is impaired. Especially some restaurants, I don't know, they use that 3.5 font on the sizing on these menus, and they can't read the menu, and so they start ordering the same thing or avoid going out. What can they do to have those conversations to help them get over that initial embarrassment of fear when they're starting to have some severe vision impairment?
So I think this is kind of complicated because I think there are multiple camps. I think the biggest camp that I see is that patients feel that they're actually doing okay. They're getting by, they're still driving, and they don't meet legal requirement to drive. I
Right.
can't tell you how many times people come in, they're 2080, 2200, and still driving a car.
Right.
So that tells me, a little bit about the family support. Like, I know this patient is driving, by what we call being legally blind. What's going on at home?
Yeah.
What are they missing at home? How are they taking care of themselves? All the time, these people live by themselves. I think that we need to check in with our family members more often, with our moms, our pops, our grandparents. They may be living in different states. You may talk to them. They may have a right frame of mind, but when you go visit them, the house is just not the same. They could have been really tidy, and the house is not so tidy. They may actually have the odor of urine on them, right? Because they may
Mhm.
not be able to make it in time or see in time because it's just a slow time to go. Or, when you have diabetes, you have a increased amount of urination sometimes. And so they may not realize that they're going down. They don't realize that their penmanship is changing, that they're writing a little more in a slant. And so it takes us to realize that, something's just not right with mom and dad. Something's not right with, like, grandma or grandpa. From a patient standpoint, they always feel like they are a burden.
Mhm.
Um, they don't want to feel like, calling you because now you got to take time off your job to take them to the doctor, right? I mean,
Mhm.
they feel like they are a burden to us, and I think that's their own implicit bias. I think that if they ask any of their children or grandkids to do something, I think we'll probably jump at the opportunity to spend time with them and take them to the doctor's office. Um, I think it's important for both patients and the family to realize that when our loved ones get to the point where they are having difficulty in driving, it may be time to turn the keys over.
Mhm.
It may be the time to maybe just restrict them from driving at night and maybe just during the day. But go in and get that evaluation, see what they see, and see if they qualify. And those conversations are hard. You know, giving up your freedom to drive, I think, is tough. I remember when we took away my dad's license. I mean, it was like taking away his manhood. I mean, it was like that was what was keeping his sterility, right?
Yeah.
And you know, he didn't take it very well,
Yeah.
but they adapt. Um, they adapt when you take them to your house. I mean, they get comfortable in their own place.
Hmm.
Sometimes, we have many people that are sandwiched between their lives. They're taking care of their kids and they also taking care of their parents.
Yeah.
But they're still better off with someone versus no one. But that conversation is difficult because the freedom,
Yeah.
uh, and they remember sometimes how vibrant they were.
Yeah.
Uh, some of these people are educators, they're very intelligent. It's the same way that we see with Alzheimer's. They may not realize they're forgetting things,
Yeah.
and so we oftentimes are the ones to recognize, how does that conversation go? Are they starting to repeat themselves and telling you a story that they just told you 5 minutes ago? These are some of the things that you can recognize. It's that short-term memory. But
Yeah.
remember, we're talking about the same age. Diabetes just don't travel by itself. You got the heart disease, you got the diabetes, you have the Alzheimer's, you have multiple medical problems, happening. But when diabetes is affected, everything is more magnified. It's easier to get an infection. It's easy to have pneumonia or have an ulcer on your.
Why is that, Doc? I want people to realize that diabetes makes you immunocompromised. That's a big fancy word that basically says your immune system is going to.
That's it. You're immunocompromised, and your body doesn't have the ability to fight off bacteria and infections like it used to. When it comes to your toes, they also lose their sensation. You get something called peripheral neuropathy. We
Mhm.
have numbness and tingling, and then you have no sensation. You can walk on a hot stone or hot concrete, get a big blister, and they have no pain. And next thing you know, a couple weeks later, they have an infected foot. A month later, they're cutting off a toe or a foot because the antibiotics they gave them, they couldn't get to that point. And
Right.
so we have to check in with our folks just to make sure they're okay. Aging is difficult. I don't think elderlies should be aging by themselves. They should be aging gratefully with support.
Yeah.
Um, and in this country, I do think, and this is a whole different topic, but one of the social determinants of health that we don't talk about them is ageism
Yeah.
and how we look at older people and view them. But they should, it's a human. If someone that has a soul, and we need to respect that and treat them as such.
You're making a fantastic point, and I'm going to ask Enrique. I hope you're still with us, but we're going to talk about. He has a good question in the comments, but you're making an excellent point, and I think for those of us that are still in that space where we have relatively good health and things like that, make the choice now. If you have somebody, because I'm dealing with, you were speaking right my language because it's the same challenge I'm having with my father. He wants his independence. He's on dialysis 3 times a week for renal failure, and he's still trying to drive, but he's not in a position where he shouldn't be driving. And so we're having these conversations with him. We want to get him some in-home care that will come by, make him some food, clean up for him, things like that. But he wants his independence. He still wants to live by himself. He still wants to drive himself places. And we're like, you're putting yourself and other people in jeopardy. But it's been a hard conversation. Me and my sisters have tried to have it, and it's difficult. But the point is, though, do what you can now to maintain your health, and so you can increase your health span. Because the longer you can remain healthy, the less. If you're worried about being a burden, the thing you could have an opportunity to not be a burden right now by eating right, exercising, making sure you're getting through all your appointments, seeing your ophthalmologist, your dentist, and your family, your physician, following up, doing what you need to do, so therefore your health span increases and you'll be less of a burden. Aging, things happen. There's going to be some things that 1 in 6 Black men get prostate cancer. That may not be something that you can control, But if you're doing everything else, you have the better chance for survival and still have a higher quality of life after anything that happens to you. But you have the control over that. And that is about how you treat yourself every day.
Dean, sometimes patients will take the recommendation from someone else better than one of their loved ones.
Yeah.
And so this is where you can have that social worker or a healthcare professional or a doctor that they have trust in, particularly if you come to an eye exam. I can't tell you how many times the kids will sidebar me before I go with mom and dad, but like, hey, you know what? We've been trying to get mom and dad to stop driving. Let us know what you think. Can you help her? Can you help us with this? She loves you. She would take your advice. And so I'll go in there and we'll have a conversation and I'll, try to soften things up. And then before I come down with the blow, how are you driving? And then when it get down to it, they'll tell you, you know what? Yeah, I am having a little bit of a hard time.
Yeah.
So coming from a different person in a different space and not being, giving them that personal space to actually talk about it, I think really helps them to say, you know what, I
Yeah.
really do need the help. I really should not be driving. And I do care about not just me, but I really don't want to harm someone else.
Yeah. So Enrique, he said he's got type 1 diabetes. He says it's hell. We could say that nowadays. He said he developed it from having epilepsy, and his pancreas broke in 2016 from all of the vicious shaking while having seizures. And so sorry about that, Enrique. And November, as a side note, November is Epilepsy Awareness Month. And we're planning on doing some programming there. And so, Enrique, to just stay with us. We're going to be talking about epilepsy, and we did a program recently in the past 6 months or so about epilepsy. And we're going to be doing some more. But he knows about herbs. But can you rid the body of type 1?
That is a really good question. And again, my heart goes out because I know these are all tough things that we're all going through, and it's not sometimes we do things to our body to deserve the things that that happen to us. And unfortunately, type 1 is one of those things that you didn't do anything to deserve this. It's not something that you ate. You're not obese. It's not that you weren't working out. Actually, most type 1s are very thin. But it's your pancreas has the inability to give you the insulin that you need. And that's really what it comes down to. So unless you get a pancreas transplant, that's the only way to probably cure type 1. Because you always, basically insulin is really a vehicle. It's like a car. And it takes sugar, which is your energy, from one place to another where it's needed, like your muscles, your brain, your other tissues. So if you don't have the insulin in your body to get the sugar absorbed where it needs it, it just circulates in your blood. That's why when you prick your finger, your sugars are real high. It's just floating around in places where it shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just damages organs because it's in a place where it shouldn't be. That's why you get the nerve damage and the blood vessel damage. So in order to keep your body stable, you need insulin, and there's nothing you can do besides taking insulin exogenously, which means that we have to give it to you, either through a shot or something like that, or you really need a pancreas transplant.
Yeah. So we do a show with the Ron and Joy Paul Kidney Center, but they also do pancreatic and liver transplant in Washington D.C. and they do a fantastic show on kidneys. And so also diabetes is the second largest cause of chronic kidney disease, right? So when you have hypertension being number 1, diabetes is number 2, and so if you have diabetes, that's another thing you got to protect because your kidneys are sensitive, and you're talking about dialysis potentially or getting on a transplant list. And if your kidneys fail, that can have a significant amount of damage to the body because your kidneys filter out all those impurities. And if they're not filtering properly, they sit in the body and they can cause all kind of toxicity in your body. And so just be careful with this. This is a vehicle, and Doc said it earlier. This is a vehicle. So if it gets flooded and you put bad fuel in, or if it gets flooded and something happens, it's got to get repaired. Otherwise, it's going to break down. And so we got to be careful about all those things. Yeah, he's had bad vision since he was a kid. Let's see. Oh yeah, Enrique. So, and I do have neuropathy, and I do take insulin. So, um, Enrique, I would say this is the first time you've really engaged with us. If this is that, I would say go to our YouTube page and search "Open Your Eyes." This is season 2, so we did a full season 1 about this, about diabetic retinopathy, sorry, diabetic retinopathy. And so you can get some really great information about it. Neuropathy, please, please, please. We did a show with Dr. Fakaridi, who is a specialist in PAD and CAD about with diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and before they take a limb, because Black people are significantly more prone to having limbs amputated versus having a catheter put in to increase the blood flow to certain areas, extremities of the body. So before, if the doctor starts recommending that you have a limb amputated, get a second opinion. Particularly, I want a physician of color, and I can give you some second opinion services that are run by some great cardiovascular specialists that can take a look at it before you get that limb amputated, because your quality of life does change significantly if you get something amputated. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, Enrique. Appreciate it. I give you some flowers here, Doc. He said, thank you very much for the knowledge. And he says, he's now, we got biggest fan. So information is power, Enrique, and you're absolutely, so thank you for the kind words, but we're here. That's why we do this show, to give you the information, because that information could increase your quality of life, and it could save somebody else's life just by having this information. So please, if you would like the program, just go ahead and click the like button, share it on your page, and in your circle of people in your support system, so they can get this information as well. Doc, we're going to wrap it up here. So any final thoughts about support services or resources that people can tap into with regards to helping them on their journey of living with diabetic retinopathy?
Yeah, I think we talked a lot about a lot of things tonight. I think the most important thing, a lot of things are closer to home than you think.
Mm-hmm.
We all have a computer. We all have these phones, which acts like a computer, and there are so many different outlets and YouTube videos and people's testimonials and support groups. I think the main thing is that you just want to make sure that it's something that's reputable. And so going to a site like the ADA or your local site center or Fight Blindness, these sort of things, I think are good stepping stones.
Mm-hmm.
And then working with your doctor, because no one knows what you need better than someone that is putting hands on you and knowing what your situation is. That support system and that staff is critical. They have pamphlets, they have different educational materials that will help you to understand, how that journey could affect you if you're not well controlled. Whether they have a diet, or whether they work with a dietitian or have a dietitian, or even have a primary care doctor, and you need an endocrinologist. I mean, that may be a different discussion where you don't have an endocrinologist taking care of you. So, what point do I need a little bit more aggressive care than what my primary care physician can give me? And that's another question to actually have. If you and your doctor have been together for several years and your A1C is still not where you want it to be, and all they're doing is changing different medicines, and now you're starting to have eye problems and kidney problems, and now you start to get a little peripheral neuropathy, you're probably not as best control as you could be. And we're not blaming the doctor for everything, because after all, we have control over our temples. We have control over what we eat. And so you may need to talk to a dietitian or talk to an endocrinologist to make sure, you need to be on something else. Am I becoming insulin resistant? Do I need a pump? And maybe the medications that my doctor is giving me is not enough. So being an advocate for yourself, I think, is also one of the take-home points, I think, from this message today. And then just talking to them about, things that you may need at home. Don't feel bad about telling people about your journey. Don't feel bad about, asking for help, particularly when it comes to medications. These companies out there, they're making a ton of money on taking care of these diseases, and they have endowments for the community. They have endowments to help pay for your insulin, for some of your medications, for ways that you can monitor yourself, like the continuous glucose, monitor. But if you don't ask, you don't know. And again, you can go to a website or you can talk to the physician to see if they know how to do that with some of the local reps, with the companies, or how they can have access to a number that they can give you to find out some of these things.
Absolutely. And I would just add, a closed mouth does not get fed. So please speak up, advocate for yourself. Endocrinologists, I was going to say that earlier. It popped in my head. So I'm glad you mentioned that. If you're not satisfied, or if your diabetes is out of control, maybe go see an endocrinologist, step it up a notch. Also, there has been some research that suggests that sometimes people of African descent, blood sugar is overestimated with A1C, and so you might need to pair it with getting your glucose checked as well, because you can be getting overtreated for diabetes. And so information is power, and so have some real conversations with your physician, and don't be afraid to change if you need to, or add another one, because again, it's your life. You only got one to live.
The last thing I would say, and I had a conversation with someone today who came to me for a new patient who saw another doctor many years ago, and which is a bad interaction. So they never just came back in. They came back in five years later, but now they can't see.
Mm-hmm.
If your communication is not well with the physician, or you don't think you're being well perceived, or just things didn't go right, the worst thing you can do is not seeking a second opinion, or see a partner, or even give the doctor a second chance. Maybe it was just a bad day. You never know what someone is going through that day. But the worst thing you can do is not go in and see someone, because after all, you're only hurting yourself. This is your body. When you lose your vision, that's your vision. Everyone else is going about their life. So I see this so much every day, and I'm like, man, if I would have saw this person several years ago, this would not be the case. And you just got to find the right person. And I understand there's barriers. I understand that there's apprehensions. I understand there's a problem with communication, but we have to work through this stuff to get the things that we need. But the worst thing we can do is not going to get help.
Absolutely. So Enrique, I'd like to. So I just put my email address, my direct email address in there. So email me if you need some names for some doctors that if you want to change your doctor, or if you need some other resources, we're here for you. That's why we do this job. That's why I'm here. I'm not trying to be on TV or anything like that. That's why we're doing this program here, to get the information. So please feel free to email me directly and just say, hey, I was a guy who was on the show last night, and whatever you need from me, I'll try to help you out as much as I can. So Doc, I know you got surgery tomorrow. It's Friday surgery, so go get some rest. Get you a healthy meal, because you're looking great. I'm noticing it's kicking in. It's looking great. So keep up the great work. And we will see you next time. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Another show, Open Your Eyes, Understanding Diabetic Retinopathy, with our partners at Genentech. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see y'all next time.
Ellis, it's always a pleasure.